Atlantic City high school sports reporter Mike McGarry. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Sully, how are you this morning?
Hey, pretty good, man. Thanks for joining us, as always.
No problem at all. I'm just wondering, can you explain to me, where did the sun go? Does it still exist? What's happened this week?
I think it's going to come out tomorrow afternoon.
Well, I hope so, but I don't believe it. I'm not even sure it still exists at this point, you know?
Yeah, tough week of trying to dig up stories when there's no games, right?
Well, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. You've got great games to be played. It's a key time of the year. You got the Diamond Classic cut off this weekend in baseball, and I guess it's frustrating for everybody involved. I guess it's good for Twitter because there's a lot of action there, updating, wondering if games are going to be played. But I think they're the only ones benefiting from it. Yeah,
definitely want to get into some high school baseball, but before that, I wanted to talk a little bit of football with you. We just had on Owen Bowles talking about the recruiting process. Real neat story by yourself. Today's Press of Atlantic City. Bo knows recruiting, talking about Bo Melton and his use of social media to try to convince some of these New Jersey players to stay in state and go to Rutgers. I guess something you probably wouldn't have imagined, 15, 20 years ago when you were in the business, and social media has just become such an everyday part of life with these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the case is, I think good players want to play with good players, and it seems to me that, good players, even going back 15, 20 years, always kind of knew each other because they would meet at these summer camps that a lot of these colleges run and things like that. But, 15, 20 years ago, it wasn't that easy to get in touch with a guy from North Jersey or get in touch with a guy from Pennsylvania or New York, or even, from Atlantic County to Cumberland County, when we had to rely on old-fashioned phones, and stuff like that. Nowadays, kids go someplace, they meet them, they get their number, they know their Twitter handle, and boom, it's a text here, it's a direct message there that really enables kids to sort of, kind of stay in touch. And also, they're going through the same thing, shared experiences. I think one of the fascinating things that Bo said in that article was not only is he kind of reaching out to other athletes and saying, hey, you should think about Rutgers because of, reasons A, B, and C, but other prospects are reaching out to him saying, well, give me a little bit, what did you like about Rutgers, or
right.
Why did you make that decision? So it kind of flows both ways. So it's kind of a fascinating, thing that goes on. And like you said in there, coaches, there's a lot of restrictions on coaches and when they can talk to athletes, and athletes can talk to each other at will. And let's face it, I mean, coaches come and go, but these are your teammates. These are the guys you're going to be playing with. So maybe, the influence that they have or why they made their decision, can play a pretty big factor in why, someone goes to college.
I'll tell you one thing that maybe gets overlooked a little bit when you're talking about the social media and the recruiting is the visual aspect of it. A lot of these colleges, they kind of superimpose their uniform on a player's photograph, and that can really be strong. I mean, you talk about a kid seeing Bo Melton in the Rutgers uniform, and they kind of say, hey, man, I'd look good in that uniform. It might sound silly to adults, but, kids that are 17 years old, they might think, man, I would look good in Rutgers, scarlet and silver and all that kind of stuff.
No, I don't think it's silly at all. I think it's the same way adults go into a house. They tour a house, and when you were going to buy a house, they can imagine, can I see myself here on Sunday afternoon sitting on a couch over there watching the Eagles in this room? People picture themselves in future situations. So you're absolutely right that social media enables, kids today to sort of picture themselves in these social situations. And the other thing that, social media is used for in recruiting is just about every big recruiting announcement comes now via social media. Bo Melton announced, hey, I'm going to Rutgers on social media, tweeted it out. So, when years ago, sometimes people would hold press conferences, and they still do that, but just about or you get a call from the coach saying, my star player just visited college, and he came back Sunday night, and he went to school Monday morning, and he told me that he's going to this school, and then you get a call from a coach on, Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning. Now, kid makes a decision, boom, it's out there for the whole world to see, and, gets a lot of reaction from fans and stuff like that. So the whole thing kind of feeds on itself a little bit.
And much to the chagrin of South Jersey sports writers, Bo Melton made the announcement at about 9 o'clock on a Friday night.
Well, that's just the way it is today. There's a 24-hour news cycle. People, and there's no waiting on it. There's no, when I first started in this business back in the, seems like the Stone Ages now, the late 80s, early 90s, if you found out something at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Monday, people, you had time to write it, and it would go in Tuesday morning's paper, or in some cases back when we had afternoon papers, Tuesday afternoon's paper. Now, if there's something that happens at 10 o'clock, we got to get it out there by 10:01. There's,
Right.
The news cycle is 24 hours a day now.
Real quick, some more football, Mike. Want to get your take on just the scheduling in terms of high school football. When are they ever going to figure this out? I mean, all this stuff on NJ.com this week about certain non-publics in North Jersey now, they don't want to play the non-public powerhouses, and they've been beaten up on public schools for years, and now they're getting beat up on, so they want to kind of pick and choose their own schedule. When does this end, and how does it get fixed?
Well, I think it's close to being fixed. I think the big thing is you've got a couple of non-public schools that kind of, I think it was Del Barton and Pope John that kind of balked at their schedule up in North Jersey. I think that's in the process of being worked out and will be worked out. I think the other thing you have that's going to be decided in June is the state non-public playoffs. It looks like the state non-public playoffs might be headed back to a break between the North and South, so you'd be more of a kind of like it is in other sports where a team like St. Augustine would play other teams from South Jersey, and South Jersey, the non-public, stretches just about from Cape May to the Raritan Bridge, basically, which is
right.
About mile marker 125 on the Garden State Parkway there. Everything south of the Raritan Bridge would be considered south, and everything north of the Raritan Bridge would be considered north. And that basically seems like we're headed. So, you have a situation where those, you have St. Augustine trying to compete for a sectional title or a state title against Don Bosco or Bergen Catholic. Those days would be over. Instead, you might have a St. Augustine versus Red Bank Catholic game for a South Jersey non-public A title, and you could have a Holy Spirit St. Joe game for a South Jersey non-public B title. So I think that's where we appear headed for.
Talking with Mike McGarry of the Press for Atlantic City. Mike, let's jump into some high school baseball. Some great conference and divisional races going on. Particularly, we haven't really talked about this much in the first month of the season, but the Cape Atlantic League National Conference is just absolute chaos right now. I mean, you got St. Joe, Cedar Creek Middle, Lower Buna. They're all kind of bunched up, and Ocean City, one of the favorites really to win that conference early in the season. They're in sixth place right now, but they're only 2.5 games out. So a lot of parity in that division. And what do you see happening going forward in the next 4 weeks?
Well, I think we got to, it's like you said, there's a big logjam at the top of the Cape Atlantic League National Conference. I think, it's a big weekend here. We've got the announcement of the Diamond Classic teams coming out tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Be on our website and every website in South Jersey, those teams being announced. And St. Joe, just by virtue of, getting more wins, having a higher winning percentage, will get that Cape Atlantic League National Conference bid there. I think the way it's kind of worked out is what the Cape Atlantic League intended to. Now, they've changed the baseball alignment for next season, but I think when they went to these two divisions, American and National Conference, they wanted competitive division races, and they definitely got that with St. Joe, Cedar Creek, and Middle, Lower, and Buna, kind of all right there, all with 2 to 3 conference losses, basically fighting out for that division title. So if the fields ever dry up and the sun comes out again, it's going to be a great May, seeing who can win that division title, basically.
How surprised are you at those standings? I mean, you think at the beginning of the season teams such as Buna and Ocean City and even St. Joe are going to be kind of fighting it out there at the top, and all of a sudden you got Cedar Creek Middle and Lower right there in the mix. Kind of surprising to me. How surprising is that to you that those kind of teams are right up there in the mix?
Well, I think you've got some, I think the quality of baseball has gotten better in the Cape Atlantic League. That's probably one of the biggest changes I've seen probably over the last 10 years is, when I first, again, I hate to say, when I first started, but, even in the early 2000s, late 90s, baseball in the spring was not the Cape Atlantic League's best sport. The Cape was basically known as a track and field power, in the spring. And baseball teams were, there was occasionally you'd have, one good team. Vineland seemed to be always good. Millville had a solid program. But starting in about 2005, 2006, and then running it and really picking it up, and with Mike Trout in 2009 and St. Augustine winning a state title, I think in 2010, 2011, around there, Sacred Heart baseball team, when they were open, won the Diamond Classic in 2008. It really just opened up a floodgate. Now you really see, the quality of baseball really elevating, and I think a rising tide raises all boats. I think when one team does well, when you see Ocean City having the success that they've had, when you see a team like Wildwood down there, even though they're in the Tri-County Conference, kind of going to a South Jersey Group 1 final, having the success that they have, it really forces the schools around them to sort of pick up their game, and also say if those teams can be successful, they're just the same as us. Why not us? Why can't we be as successful as that?
Mike, real quick before we let you go, Diamond Classic, like you said, they're going to be selecting the teams tomorrow. Who do you like? Who do you like in that? Can any of these Cape teams go on a run and win that? Obviously, it takes a lot of pitching depth. You're talking about a 2-weekend span where you're playing a bunch of games. St. Augustine, can they be a squad that gets that done? And, how do you see the Diamond Classic playing? It's such a tough tournament to really predict who's going to be in the finals because there are so many games and you have to have that great pitching depth.
Right. You hit it on the head. It is pitching depth. You look at it, St. Joe's going to get the automatic bid out of the CAL National. St. Augustine gets that automatic bid out of the CAL American. St. Augustine has made that run before. When they had Joey Gatto and Zach Warren, they were able to have that quality pitching depth, and they won the tournament, I believe it was 2 years ago. And you're right, that pitching, that first weekend, you play that first weekend, which will be next weekend, is first-round games. But then that second weekend, you've got to play 3 games to win a Diamond Classic title. And like you said, that does test your pitching depth. Does St. Augustine have that pitching depth? Yes, they do. They have the good arms, and Billy Chilleri, Morgan Weck, another good pitcher. So St. Augustine has that pitching depth. And then it'll be interesting to see if any Cape Atlantic League teams get at-large bids there. I think Millville is right on the cusp of an at-large bid, and Mainland and Ocean City are also in contention. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there today. And just because I get a lot of emails about it too, it's also a Groom Day today. Jason Groom of Barnegat will be pitching up in Toms River today against Toms River North at 2 p.m. in the Ocean County semifinals. So you can follow me on Twitter and look at pressofac.com or maybe go the old-fashioned way and pick up a paper tomorrow to see how Jason Groom did up in Barnegat for Barnegat today against Toms River North in the Ocean County semifinal.
Good stuff, Mike. Appreciate it as always, and get ready for a busy week, buddy.
Oh, Sully, thanks for having me. Thanks.
No problem. Have a good weekend. Thanks, man.
You too.
That was Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City.